and actually think, the animal fats is probably where some of that high LDL is coming from.
Okay, cool. So we can see here that his cholesterol is a little high. And I personally know your history with cholesterol, Josh, but if you want to give them a brief take on where your cholesterol has been in the past and in relation to how it is now.
Sure. Yeah. So definitely have a family history of high blood pressure and cholesterol. But generally speaking, my numbers are pretty good. But I do tend to go a little bit on the higher side, particularly with LDL cholesterol, and it kind of fluctuates based on my diet. It's not something I've been able to get under perfect control yet. So I have to do a bit more tweaking and optimizing to kind of dial in, what's going to bring that LDL number down. As you can see, it's high and outside of the reference range. Obviously, reference ranges don't tell you everything, but it can be good guidelines. Typically, if you're outside the reference range, it's can either indicate a disease state or put you on track towards one in the incidence of LDL in particular. Like having a high LDL number isn't in and of itself a bad thing, in the moment. But you definitely want to work on optimizing those numbers. So as far as the actual number, so I tend to eat like a high protein, but also high fat diet from mixed sources. So that can include, like I think it's monounsaturated fats from things like avocados, but I also eat like, pork and, like 85% beef and things like that. So, I do get a good amount of animal fats in there. And actually,
85% lean?
85% lean, yeah. So 15% fat. And actually think, the animal fats is probably where some of that high LDL is coming from. But yeah, I'm actually trying to cut and lose fat right now. So I do have to get my calories from other sources besides carbs. So also I just like animal fats. It tastes good. So that's something I still have to work on getting under control. I think it's a bit better than it was in previous readings, though. Typically, I've been like between 160 to 170. So, and as you can see, do you want to make any comments on the LDL before we talk about it in the context of the other numbers?
Yeah, so I was going to give my take. So I know your cholesterol history, and actually this has come down from previous years. Right. Particularly your LDL used to be in the 170s. So it's a lot of progress being made. So Josh hit on a few points that I want to touch on real quick. The mass media and pharma has led you to believe that, your total cholesterol is like the end all be all, especially your LDL and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, high LDL in and of itself is not great, but it's usually, and this is where, you have to look into other parameters here. Not just his LDL, but also his triglycerides and his HDL cholesterol. So his LDL, yes, is particularly high, but as you said before, he's consuming a lot of fats as well as a lot of fats, animal protein, which contains a lot of fats. The only thing that I would stress in particular, which I think this is more useful, is getting a test where you can actually see the particle sizes of each LDL cholesterol as well as HDL and triglycerides. That gives you a much better indication of how small the particles are. The smaller the particles are, the worse they are. So LDL cholesterol is usually an indication of an inflammatory state, likely within the arteries and in different areas of the body. So that's why when you get a test that allows you to see the sizes of the particles, the smaller the particles, the higher the inflammation state in the arteries. So this test in and of itself doesn't give us enough information. Is one of my big frustrations with modern day medicine is cholesterol parameters need to show more than just HDL, LDL, and triglycerides. There needs to be more information available for us to give a conclusive recommendation on what needs to be done. Because if we just go off what he says here, LDL cholesterol, all I can tell him is, oh, what's your diet like? And he just laid it out for me. I'm like, well, that's actually not that bad, right? The only thing that he can do is pretty much just cut down on the amount that he's eating to meet his certain macro and micronutrient needs and overall calorie point, and that in itself will likely bring that number down. And as he does that, as he's losing fat, that number will likely come down over time. However, it's a double-edged sword, because as you cut down on that, remember, guys, a lot of these healthy fats contribute to your HDL cholesterol as well. So not as much as LDL though, but anyway, where we're at right now, pretty much the only thing we can conclude with this information is, based on his current diet, is pretty much to overall eat less, so his calorie allotment allows him to lose fat as well as burn through a lot of this LDL, and fast on top of that, because as your body continues to burn fat, it lowers the inflammatory state in the body, which will likely also lowers LDL. So this will also tie into his triglycerides as well. But do you want to go into that, Josh, real quick, and talk about your triglycerides? Because this is also very important for the viewers too, because they need to distinguish the difference between triglycerides and LDL. And
well, actually, I think maybe you should go for that, because you're more of an expert in metabolics than I am. So,
gotcha. So for triglycerides, guys, this is more the number you need to be concerned with. Triglycerides in the body are particularly used to, pretty much when you have inflammation in the arteries, they're what's used along with LDL to bind the particles together and attach to the arteries to seal up inflammatory states. Inflammatory states are basically harm that's done to the insides of the arteries and different blood vessels in your body. And when there's large amounts of inflammation there, you have higher amounts of LDL running through your body to patch up those parts in the arteries. This is how you get blood clots over time. As you have higher inflammatory states in your vessels through insulin, high amounts of blood glucose, and different nutrients shoveling through the body from overeating, you're going to have higher amounts of inflammation within the blood vessels. And this is particularly what brings up your LDL cholesterol and your triglycerides. Now, your triglycerides in particular can be harmful because they are what bind the LDL together to stick to the inside of the blood vessels. So the higher this number is, generally the worse your the shape of your blood vessels are. Right. And the higher disease state you are likely to be in over time. This is why particularly I like to see this number under 50. That's what I worked to get mine under. When I was in a very bad metabolic state, mine was as high as I think 250 at one point. It was really bad. Yeah, it was bad. I'm going to go over that blood work sometime so you guys can actually see it.
Yeah, you should do that all in chronological order. That'd be very interesting.
Exactly. I think I'm going to do that sometime the next week or two. Yeah. But mine used to be absolutely terrible, and I pretty much have worked to get mine under 50 since. There are some experts out there that say under 30 is even better, but under 50 is where you want to be. So his is at 80, which isn't bad. It isn't bad.
Actually, an improvement. I've been up at 100, 110 typically. So
right.
Yeah, I think as I continue to lose weight and cut carbs, that's improving. But yeah, I mean, like we said, animal fats. So I try to keep it. I try to keep it healthy. But go ahead and what recommendations do you make there to try and get towards a more optimal number?
Yeah, so in this particular case, especially when it comes to triglycerides, the unfortunate part of a lot of high-fat animal proteins is that they do cause inflammation in the blood vessels at times in high quantities.
They do taste great, though.
They do taste amazing. That is facts. Grass-fed beef, yeah, dude, that shit is fire. Sorry, excuse my language for any sensitive people listening, but that shit is fire.
There you go.
But the simple things that you can do to bring that number down is to simply switch out a lot of those high fat animal proteins for lower fat animal proteins. Just chicken, turkey, things along that nature will definitely bring those numbers down, as well as your LDL. Simple switcheroo. And those are also lower in calories as well. So it will help you meet your calorie allotment even better.
I tell you what I could do. I could work on getting more fats from sort of more vegetable sources. Like I said, up the avocados and, maybe added some butter. like
Grass-fed butter, 100%.
grass-fed butter, and then reduce things like like the pork chops and
Yep.
that's probably a pretty easy adjustment, and sure we could probably see that number go down a good 10, 15 points or so just off that. So
Exactly. And you can just, take like a tablespoon of avocado oil and just season your chicken with that, or season your turkey with that. It's an easy fix,
a good way to get quick calories for sure.
Exactly. And that would be the case for a lot of guys who I know who love beef, steak, ground beef. An easy switch to lower your calories and lower like the amount of fats, especially if your cholesterol parameters are high. You can simply just switch that out for ground turkey or chicken. Very simple switch. So
what fat percentage would you recommend?
So
90-10?
Yeah, so for fat percentage, especially for beef, man, the leaner the better, man. The leaner the better.
Yeah, but so for people watching, what percentage fat meat should they be getting if they want to reduce their LDL and their triglycerides?
100%. So, in my opinion, and what I've seen, what the anecdotal studies have listed out, at least 80% lean. At least, I would shoot for 90.
When you say that, like you'd like the average, let's say you go to a Taco Bell, for example, what percentage is the beef there? Fat, like it's got to be more fat than actual protein, right?
Oh, dude. Actually, for that processed crap that's there, it's actually still around like 60 to 40. Surprisingly,
yeah. It's high though. It's high for fat.
It's fucking high, dude.
Why it tastes so good? Well, it depends on who you ask as to whether or not it tastes good, but
Hey, I don't know. I haven't eaten Taco Bell in years, but I remember that Burger King tasting pretty damn good back in the day, man.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, I worked there for 2 years when I was a teenager. Anyway, side tangent. But you definitely want to aim for at least 80%, ideally 90-10. And you can easily find these at your local grocery store. This is not hard to find nowadays, and yes, it might be a little more expensive, but it's your health, guys. It's worth investing into. And if you don't want to do that, like I said, you could simply do what Josh does and just simply take some avocados or get some avocado oil and buy some chicken and just season that bitch with that. It can actually be cheaper and a better use of your time because chicken's way quicker to make than a steak or ground beef. So, but those are some simple things you can do. Yeah, sorry, you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say it depends on how you do it. Like, I just throw everything in. I have a toaster oven, so doesn't matter what it is. I just throw it in there, throw some healthy fat, throw some avocado oil in there and seasoning. So like meal prep doesn't have to be complicated.
It does not. However, both of us have, how would I say, a high tolerance for food that doesn't taste amazing, right? We have very low, let's be honest,
we're easily satisfied. I mean,
we're not high maintenance in that regard. But
right. I mean, I try to get different seasonings from like Trader Joe's and, switch it up day to day. But yeah, just throw the meat in there, throw the veggies in there, drizzle some oil on it and then season it. So, I mean, that keeps me satisfied.
No, 100%. 100%. But that's a simple way to go about it, guys. You can take Josh's advice there, and it's very easy to just throw some grass-fed beef in the toaster oven. I have one as well. Yeah. Very simple to do. But anyway, that runs through his cholesterol, and that'll actually help bring his non-cholesterol, non-HDL cholesterol down as well.
Yeah.
What's that?
You covered HDL.
Oh yeah, so his HDL actually is pretty good. You want to see that number well over 40, right? So in terms of his HDL cholesterol, once again, a lot of this plays a part because of the healthy fats that he eats. So, guys, if you eat healthy fats,
sorry to interrupt. I can actually say from direct experience, eating consuming avocado oil with my foods, like drizzling, like I said, drizzling that oil on there. Also, eating avocados has directly led to an increase in that number. So,
yeah, 100%. Because I know from your history, this used to be in the 50s, right?
Yeah. Typically, it would be in the low 50s.
Right. So this is actually seeing an increase. So overall, guys, his lipids are trending in the right direction, right? It's progress being made, and this is overall what you want. And you have to realize, guys, for people, this is going to happen slower than it does for others. It took me almost 2.5 years to correct mine. So this stuff takes time, but overall he's trending in the right direction, especially as he loses weight.
And
But
you'd say that having a high HDL, like the higher the HDL, the better, right?
Yeah, so the higher the HDL, because what that does is it helps clear out all those sticky triglycerides and LDL out of your arteries. So the more of that you have, the more of it clears out. So ideally, you'd want this number above 70. That is a good indication. You want it at least half of what your LDL is. In an ideal world, your HDL would be the same as your LDL, and they'd both be around like 70 to 80. In an ideal world, right? And your triglycerides would be under 50. Those are sort of like the parameters you want to look for, or try to strive for, and that's in a perfect world. But overall, your stuff is trending in the right direction. If we, as we said before, the simple fixes are just switching out a lot of those high calorie, high fat proteins for lower fat, leaner proteins. In terms of chicken and like grass-fed turkey would be great alternatives. And simply in terms of the way you split out your diet, 50% protein, 30 to 35% fats, and 10 to 15% carbs. It's very, very simple to do, especially if you get all of your carbs from vegetables. So, but that's a simple way to do it, guys. His HDL is great. His HDL is great. So hopefully, as he diets down, this number stays where it's at.
Yeah.
So
should be easy to do.
Yeah, 100%.